Well, it's been a minute, but welcome back to the Duerrisms Podcast, along with the man, the myth, the legend, the king of Muddy River Sports, and one of our very favorite writers anywhere, Mr. Matt Shuckman, back in the house with us. We had some complications the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Your
life
side
got in the way.
Yeah, your side and my side, but we're here.
We are, and which is a great thing. And I apologize to our loyal viewers that we've had to stumble through the last couple of weeks, but we figured it out.
You and I also have jobs to balance, so it's not real easy from time to time to get in the same place.
Well, last week it was really wild because we had all the regional golf going on the days we normally tape this.
Right.
So it was like trying to find a window to do it became impossible.
Before we get into sports, I'm going to start with you with food.
Oh, okay.
And I was inspired this week.
I don't like food at all. You can't tell that at all.
We're food lovers in this building. Inspired by the chance that I got to try one of St. Louis's wonderful delicacies this week with their hot salami sandwich at, I think they pronounce it Joya's, is that right?
I believe that's how it's pronounced
Joya's
correctly.
Deli on the Hill. But I wanted to ask you, do you have an all-time favorite sandwich, Matt? What would it be?
I do.
Okay.
And people might laugh at me because it's when you go to Kansas City, you go get barbecue. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's a myriad of places you can go to, and
So many good ones.
And everybody seems to have their favorite.
They do.
I go to the same place every time, at least once. I'll go to some of the other barbecue spots, but I end up at Gates every single time for the burn-end sandwich.
Hard to beat a good burn-end sandwich in Kansas City.
It is, and I've had different burn-end sandwiches other places. I've had burn-ends just by themselves at a myriad of places because, when I'm on the road, I got to try barbecue.
Sure.
But that is by far my favorite sandwich I've ever had anywhere.
Do you think people overlook Kansas City as a food city? Because every place I've eaten there, barbecue and beyond has been really, really good over
Well,
the
I
years.
think people only think of it as a barbecue stop, a barbecue destination. They forget that it has so many other options and varieties and places to go. And I know back in the day when I was covering Mizzou and the Big 12 tournament was held, the Big 12 basketball tournament was held in Kansas City, that was a great weekend because you got to sample all kinds of things, not just barbecue.
If Matt Shuckman's making a sandwich at home for himself, what would be on that?
Well, turkey, ham, and then the cheese depends on mood.
Okay. How about the bread?
The bread, well, see, I got to go with something soft.
Okay.
Now, what I really like is to take some sweet French bread.
Okay.
A little butter on it, griddle it, get that toasty edge to it.
Okay. Fair enough.
But I will say this: I'm not a condiments guy.
No, not at all.
No, because I don't like mayo.
Okay.
I don't like mustard.
Okay.
Barbecue sauce and ketchup are my two that I'll put on like certain things. But when it comes to a sandwich, for the most part, meat, cheese, lettuce,
and dry,
and I'm good.
Largely dry.
Yes.
Anyway. Okay. Fair enough. Interesting stuff, Matt Shuckman.
Maybe a little Caesar dressing, maybe a little light Italian dressing, just a touch to give it a little life, but not. Again, I'm not a mayo guy. I'm not a mustard guy. I'm not a sour cream guy.
Bacon?
Oh,
okay.
Come
I just asking. Just needed to know.
Come on.
Okay,
bacon.
fair enough.
Bacon makes everything better.
There is not a thing on the planet that is not improved by bacon.
Exactly.
Let's talk some football.
Okay, sounds good.
We haven't been together for a while, and I'm going to come out with guns blazing with you. Because tonight, as we record this, KHQA is releasing the first of our student athletes of the week.
Okay.
And we are talking about the great Keaton Pennewell.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty good. In all realms. 3.8 student,
Yes.
amazing young man, a delight.
Correct.
I mean, he grew up a Georgia Bulldog fan, so we'll hold that against him. But otherwise, I know, it's hard to take much against him. But it got me thinking this week, Matt Shuckman.
Yeah.
You've got, and since I've been here since 1995, you've got the Chins, you've got the Watsons, you've got the Williams, obviously you've got the Whites, you've got the Pennewells. I'm sure I missed someone in there. Who's the first family of Monroe City football?
Ooh. Wow, that's a good one.
See?
That's a really,
There's a lot of great historic legacy there.
There are.
The Minters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's a tough call. That's a really tough call.
We'll let you think about that for a second, and maybe
my initial reaction, and so I've got a lot of names going through my head right now, and a lot of them tend to, I also come up as basketball players and track athletes and stuff, so there's a lot rolling through my head. I don't know if you can put one above the other, but if you put my feet to the fire, man. Well, okay,
I feel good about this
You can
now.
go so many different ways on how you define it.
All right. Well, I think people know Andre White is a favorite of yours, and
yeah,
long been.
Yeah.
And obviously,
Dre and I have a friendship that's gone on for 30 years, since our days at Mizzou together.
Absolutely.
And the Whites would be right up there. I think the Watsons.
Yeah.
You know, when you start talking pedigree and you start talking that, rings matter.
They do.
You know, rings matter, which is why you got to throw the Hayeses in there too.
Oh, absolutely. Another really good one on the front end of that.
So I would tend to lean. God, somebody's gonna be mad at me no matter what.
You can't win with this one. I have set you up to fail, brother.
You have. I would lean Watson.
Okay.
That's where I would lean. Off the top of my head.
So today I'm not going to ask you who was better, Kyle or Ryan, just because I don't want to do that to you twice in one conversation. But let's talk about this Monroe City team, because at this point, they've looked pretty bulletproof.
True.
They have got a big one looming a week from Friday with Macon.
No question about it.
And that's at their place, back at Langford.
That's right, and it's going to be for the CCC championship.
Macon's got a really tough end to their schedule when you go South Shelby, Monroe City, Centralia, like that. But that's going to be a big test for all involved. Do you feel like, with what you've seen to this point, with the body of work, Monroe City is a team that can compete and perhaps win a state championship this year? Okay.
No doubt in my mind.
Do you have any qualms about who they are at this point? Is there a soft spot on that roster, or is there something that you need to see them clean up between now and then that you think might be the delineation? Because you know the East Bucks of the world are going to be tough.
True. No. Could you get better in little facets along the way? Yes. Sure. No question about it. Do I see a glaring gap? Do I see a glaring hole? Do I see something that goes, that's going to keep them from doing this or getting to the state semis or the state championship game? No, I don't. I don't see that they have one of those big question marks looming.
Okay.
Because you look at every level, and they seem to have something significant at every level. If you look at it defensively, not only do they have one of the best linebackers in the state of Missouri, but they've got speed in the defensive backfield. Their defensive line has been solid and gotten good penetration. Their offensive line has been really good blocking, and you talk about speed. The way they run the ball, the way they throw the ball, they just have weapons at every level offensively. Again, Class 1 is different on the Missouri, on both sides of the river. You can talk Class 1A on Illinois, Class 1 in Missouri. When it comes to special teams, they've got guys that can return the ball.
They do.
But what happens if you're in a game where you need an extra point or you need a field goal? A field goal could win you a game. Do they have a kicker?
Oh, that's a fair question.
To me, that would be the one big question mark. It would be special teams in that sense of.
So I had this sense, because when I sat down with Keaton this week, I had this sense that, I think they're better than they were last year defensively.
I would agree with that.
I think all the guys in front of Keaton, those defensive line guys, and they're not named guys by anybody's stretch of the imagination, but they're fast becoming that a little bit. And I asked him, and he said it's the best defense he's been involved with. Okay. I don't know offensively yet if they're as explosive as they were last year.
Do they have to be, though?
I don't know that they do. And I think I think there is a vibe, a dynamic with David Kirby and calling plays that he is willing, to channel his inner Jim Unruh, for lack of a better word, because there are obviously ties back to that program through Brock Idris.
Correct.
And go fullback-centric. And he's willing to be boring and do that. Well, he's also, as we saw last week, though, against Palmyra, willing to come out on the first play and throw it to Jalen Countryman, who might be the most underutilized asset in the Tri-States. That kid can flat catch a football.
And he can fly.
He does. He's super fast.
And we talk about their speed. Cam Jones and Pennywell's got good speed.
He does.
Waylon DeGray.
Oh, he has super speed.
So they have the weapons to be explosive, but I don't think they have to be to win. I think they've got the right mindset that if they need to grind out a drive, if they need to go fullback-centric, as you called it, they can. Yeah, I think their offensive line is good enough to make that happen. And then what if you break one with one of those speed guys? What if you get a guy behind the defense and Reese Bewley can hit him? There's so many pieces to the puzzle, but I think the fact that they can go either way sets them up for success.
Let me take your temperature on another part of Northeast Missouri, and that's with Hannibal, because that is a team that has improved a ton.
Yes.
And I know the front end of the schedule was deliberately tough,
Right.
but we've seen it with Waylon Anders and the progress he's made.
No
we've
question.
seen it with that defense a ton over the course of especially the last 3 weeks. Where are you at on Hannibal at this point in terms of their long-range capability?
They're going to make a playoff run.
Okay.
Are they championship level right now? That's a hard call.
Okay.
Yes, they had some hiccups early, schedule-induced hiccups and youth-induced hiccups. They had to get through some of those growing pains.
Sure.
And they have. Obviously, they got the best player in anywhere.
Right.
You know, that makes up for a lot of things. But I think you see the progress they've made defensively. They've got to continue that. They're not getting tested right now.
No, they're not. The NCMC does them a disservice.
It does. So what we saw against Troy, you know, and some of the big plays they let up there, they got to make sure that doesn't happen in the postseason. And I think if they can continue to do that throughout the NCMC, if they can put the clamps on the NCMC schools like they should be able to do, like they are expected to do, that will go a long way to doing that, to shoring up the fact that they gave up some big plays early in the season.
I think there's also, much like Monroe City, to me, a dynamic where I feel like this defense is better this year. I know what they lost, especially I know what they lost in the secondary.
Right.
I think the front end of that defense is very, very special.
I agree.
And I think Aeneas makes up for a lot in the back of what they lost last year, just in terms of the fact he's better and he's quicker at reading things than he was a year ago.
Yes.
As easy as the game comes to him. I keep marveling at what Waylon Anders has done to kind of get to where he is.
True.
I'm sort of more optimistic about Hannibal than I was at the outset of this season.
I would agree with that because I didn't know if Waylon Anders would make the progression this year that he has. We all know what Aeneas can do offensively. Markel Humphrey has been very good, you know, as the 1-2 combination of the backfield. Then it comes back to what can the quarterback do? Because you had a 3-year starter at quarterback that graduated. Waylon Anders is taking over that position, so it's like, okay, how's he going to fit in? How's he going to mature? And I think he's matured better than either one of us really thought he would at the start of the season. I thought there'd be more growing pains.
So some of that with Waylon is taking a look at him because he's not physically mature in the way that a Cortland Watson was body type yet. I mean, you know, this is a kid who's going to get bigger and stronger as things go along. But as Aeneas Williams said, you know, he's got that it factor, and we're starting to see that more often.
And I think we overlook some of that sometimes because you look at the physical tools.
Right.
Does a kid have the it factor? And you don't know that till you see them a few times on the field. You know, we're not seeing them in practice every day. The coaches and teammates see that. See, maybe has that it factor. Well, until he goes out and proves it to everyone else, you sit there and go, okay, what's it going to be like? Then you start to see it, and then you go, oh, okay. Now we understand why this is all, how the transformation is taking place.
So you and I are both really impressed with Monroe City's defense.
Yes.
And we're more impressed than we thought we would be with Hannibal's defense.
Correct.
Statistically, I could make the argument that neither of them are the best defense right now in the tri-states. That you can find in Camp Point at this particular point.
Wow.
Now, I know that they haven't played the same level of competition, but what have you seen, and you saw the Panthers in person.
I did.
What have you seen from the Panthers that leads you to believe, because I know the WIVC isn't doing them a whole lot of service in much the same way the NCMC has in the North.
Yes, but I think you've also have some well-coached teams that they're going up against.
That's
and
true.
I think that's where, and that's not to take anything away from other leagues and what teams are doing. But you and I both know at the 1A level on the Illinois side, the well-coached teams in the WIVC outside of Camp Point Central can really challenge them.
They can.
And you look at what they did to Brown County, which is a very well-coached team, and is having success this year.
Yes.
You know, Jacksonville Route is a very well-coached team.
They are.
Unity Payson is a well-coached team.
I think Matt Woodworth has done one of the most underrated jobs of anybody in the area.
I would agree. And you go up and down the line in the WIVC of how well-coached those teams are. So that, to me, then that says, wow, because these other coaches aren't making adjustments to do anything against Central's defense, as good as these coaching staffs are. Now, some of them don't have the horses at times, you know, and that's cyclical with some of these programs. You look at Triopia. Triopia is so good over the years as having a down year.
Well, they're playing a JV squad. Yeah. You know, it's not like Adam Brockhouse got stupid or Rich Thompson got stupid.
Exactly.
They're just playing young kids against really good teams.
It's cyclical.
Right.
So But with that said, Central does such a great job of reading and maintaining what they're supposed to do on the defensive side. Nobody's trying to do too much. And I know you had Elijah Gennebacher as your midseason defensive player of the year. And he's done a whale of a job. But I think that giving it to one guy on that defense
is hard to do.
It's hard to do because everybody does their job. And I saw that against Brown County. And I had an interesting look at that because I sat in the end zone.
Yeah.
And when you sit in the end zone, you can see gaps and you can see things that you don't normally see from the sideline. And the way they filled gaps and the way their defensive line forced everything away and then allowed the linebackers to come get them. They plugged gaps. There was no room to run for Brown County.
No, there's not. As you pointed out, there's a lot of system to what Brad Dixon does.
No question.
Guys set up to make the middle linebackers look good.
Right.
But for as young as they are, those interior linebackers, a freshman and a sophomore,
well, they just
are
fly
special.
to the ball.
Yeah.
They fly to the ball, and they know how to tackle. There's an art to tackling, and there's a way of getting the job done that some people don't quite realize. It's not just, I'm going to run full bore and hit you as hard as I can with my shoulder and knock you to the ground. Those guys know how to wrap up. They know how to take somebody's legs out. They know angles. For as young as they are, they really understand the game well. And I think that goes back to the system there, the way the coaches have built that program, and from the ground up. They're learning how to play Central football from the time they're wee tots.
I find something interesting about this week for Central, and I know you went to Mendon Unity last week for Unity Payson and Beardstown. And unlike a lot, and I spent a lot of time on Duerrisms, the column this week, writing about the really good job I think that Elliot Craig has done in Beardstown going from point A to where they're at now, because they had huge questions about their line and huge questions about their defense. But I don't think Central to this point has played the kind of speed and skill position talent that Beardstown has. Do you find something interesting in that matchup this week, just as a kind of an off type for Central's defense to play this week?
Well, I think it's real interesting from the standpoint of, we talk so much about Central's speed, the fast cats, and the way they use the track training and relate it to football, and they don't build as much for size, they build more for speed. Well, now they're going to see a team that has a lot of speed, and the Domitians and Owen Quigley. And I saw last week what those guys could do.
Right.
And give them an open space.
Dangerous.
They're very dangerous. Can Central, when one of those guys gets to the edge, when one of those guys gets a gap, or a seam, how quickly can Central close that down? That, to me, that's what we're going to find out this week, is if somebody gets around an edge or gets to the second level, can Central run them down? Can Central close those gaps? Can they chase somebody down from behind? I think they can. I think they can do a really good job of that stuff. They just haven't had to do a lot of that.
Right.
So this week we might actually see that happen if Beardstown can figure out a way to get past that first level of defense and get into some open space, get into the flat and see what happens, and make guys make a tackle, make an open field tackle, not just gum things up.
Muddy River has allowed you to do some different things that you didn't get to do in your past guys, and that means going out and seeing games that weren't games that you'd ordinarily get to see, which I know you're enjoying the heck out.
Oh, no question.
I usually have to make the longest trip based on my job version. Last week, like you, I did something against type and finally got to stay in town and watch Quincy High.
Yeah.
I know it was a loss, but I was super impressed with that defense, even with the loss of Max Wires, which I think took a lot of their straight up run, what do you want to call it, volition away from them.
He's a thumper in the middle.
That's what they missed. But if you're a Quincy High fan, the future and the immediate future, I walked away thinking, man, that could be a really, really good football team in short order.
No question. And I don't want to take anything away from this group or what they're doing, but so many of us have talked that, well, wait till next year.
Yeah.
When these guys have another year under them. Well, don't wait till next year.
It's happened.
It's happened, and it's happening. And the fact that they coulda, shoulda, woulda, coulda beat Sterling is a great feather in the cap for this group. I know they didn't get it done in the end, but they're going to. They're going to win games like that. And suddenly you start looking at that and go, okay, so this week they go to Geneseo. They can win there.
Yeah.
Next week's a bye week, basically. They play Alleman.
Right.
Then they finish up at home.
Your friends in Alleman are going to love that, by the way.
Yeah, I know. They don't like me a whole lot anyway. But then they closed the regular season at home against Rocky.
Which is a very interesting game all of a sudden.
It is, but they could take a 3-game winning streak into the playoffs. Yeah. I wouldn't want to play them in the postseason.
And it's not just the talent. It would be that talent with that level of confidence going 3 in with momentum. I agree with you.
And not only if they win all 3, but then you look back and go, man, we could have beat Sterling. We should have beat Sterling. And it just adds to that confidence and that growth of this group. And I'm telling you what, again, I would not want to see their name on the draw when the playoffs come out.
Well, and the thing that doesn't translate, I watch a lot of video, obviously, after the fact. But when you're live, you realize how feisty that defensive line is.
Oh, no question.
Karan and Jet, just their pursuit and how dogged it is. And those are things that I don't think get said enough because they've got a great back. They've got a wonderful passing game, unbelievable receivers.
We really haven't talked much about their defense all season because their offense has kind of carried the show.
And it's fun.
Because people like seeing that, But their defense has been pretty dynamic. I know we talked a lot with Ty Douglas early in the year because he was so good. He's still so good. But I think their defensive front, and it's hard to say that after the way Moline ran through them, but they've made adjustments they've improved and they learned from that game. And I think that's the biggest thing that stands out to me is the coaching staff, the players. They made adjustments after that Moline game and have become better defensively. They didn't just go, oh, well, this is what's going to happen to us on defense. Let's just go outscore somebody by throwing the ball. No, they want to be good defensively. They want to be better defensively. They want to win games defensively. That's a great sign.
One more on the football front, and then we'll kind of segue into a couple of other things that may be on your mind. But I know you've become a pretty fast fan, and the fans of Macomb have become a pretty fast fan of Matt Schuckman. I'd like to make the alternative argument that as impressive as the Farmington win was, a lot of things fell their way. They actually had to go and take the win last week from Elmwood Brimfield.
No question.
And it was traditional in the fact that you had Ethan Ladd with 18 tackles, and you had Lindsey May with 16, and Max Reiner with 43 tackles from your linebackers?
From your linebacker. That was
after a pick-6 interception that puts you behind the 8 ball for the first time really all season.
Right. Great response.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Great response. Great response to adversity when they really hadn't had adversity this year. They've been able to kind of handle everyone. I know the Rova game was high scoring, but they were in control of that throughout. And then the Farmington game, which we thought would be a much better game than it was, they just blew their doors off of them.
Yeah, and they never adjusted.
No, and the only adversity they had that night was the weather. And it was like, okay, whatever, let's go roll.
Yeah.
It really felt like that. Last week they faced adversity and they handled it. They handled it the way you expect a team that is 6-0 to handle it. Settle in, don't panic, take care of business. Make adjustments so that you don't make that same mistake twice. And they didn't. And again, another team that we talked a lot about offensively because with Jack Duncan can really wing it. A really good quarterback. And then the weapons on the outside, Langdon Allen, JT Jeter, and the guy you featured last week in Ian Case at a tight end spot. I mean, they have so many weapons, it's easy to talk on and on about their offense. But their defense is what is going to win them games in the postseason. They're going to be able to score on teams. We've seen that. They're not going to get shut out by any means. But you see the way those linebackers flow to the ball. And no arguing Keaton Pennywell is arguably the best linebacker in our area. Macomb's guys are right up there.
Yeah, they're not bad.
I'd have a hard time looking at them and not going, okay, maybe there's a defensive player of the year candidate right there.
I also think it's time we probably all took our hat off and tipped it a little bit to Dave Wilson and the job he's done coordinating that defense.
Yes.
Because, you're right. We were really gaga about what Tanner's done with the offense and the way he's geared it and how much fun it is, much like Quincy High.
Right.
Dave Wilson's gotten after it with those guys. And there are guys playing up front who get no credit whatsoever who are clearing the way for those linebackers to eat. And as we saw this week, they are flat eating.
And again, it's we talk so much, but when you have stability within a coaching staff and you have guys that the head coach can trust in the coordinator spots to sit there and go, run the defense. And Tanner's done that with Dave Wilson. Just run the defense. I don't want to interfere with what you're doing. I trust you to do this, and look at what's happening. They get after it.
Other things on your radar at this point? I know we're coming off a big week for Quincy Notre Dame golf, which I don't think at the beginning of the season any of us saw coming.
No, I thought there was a chance they would get through regional. I didn't think they would get to state. The boys, that is, would get to state, especially looking at who was in their sectional. But, man, those seniors have done a great job of taking advantage of their final chance. And a kid like Ross Thompson and a guy you'll be able to read about on Muddy River Sports here before Friday, before the state tournament starts. Here's a kid who was a senior, who was a freshman on a team that finished second in state. He was part of the 6-man team that went to state in 2019. And I believe when he opened the year, I got to go back and double check my notes. He was number 5 on a 6-man team as a senior. When he was supposed to be
number one or two,
You know, and I know when they first, the D.A. Wyburn Invitational, which was the first event of the year for them, a freshman, Bo Eftink, was number 1. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, okay. Golf will humble you.
Oh, yeah.
It will infuriate you. It will exasperate you. It will break your will if you let it. He did not do that. You're going to be able to read about that and how he embraced the fact that, yeah, I'll take these lumps, but I'll get better from it. And he really did. He really embraced that and worked to get better, worked on his game, worked on being a leader for this group. And he's been their most consistent player in the postseason. It's great to see.
The flip side of that is you've had a freshman on the girls' side in Belle Boudreau who stepped up and been a monster for them. And they're getting rounds from everybody. It's not just Hannah and everybody else anymore, which has been a real credit to Jason Knuffman for spurring the confidence of those other girls.
No question. And I watched, watch them up at Camp Point, and they did such a nice job of when they had a bad hole of not letting it ruin their day. Yes, some of them didn't like their scores at the end of the day.
That's a tough course.
But you saw the confidence that we can get through this. We can do this. And then you see Blair Eftink come out in the sectional and play really well. And, Hannah Knuffman is going to be right there. That's a special group that has done really nice things. And it will continue to do nice things because they're not done just because those seniors are graduating.
You've done a really good job when we've met here, giving us nice teases of the things ahead that are coming for Muddy River. You mentioned Ross Thompson. Anything else on your immediate radar that the good folks should be looking out for? Not that you shouldn't be reading this man every single day.
Nothing huge coming up.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we're starting to get into that postseason grind and stuff. We've got some things in the works as far as the college level. We want to give you a more taste of Quincy University women's volleyball.
Oh, that's so much fun to watch.
Oh my! And they earned it.
Yeah.
They've earned it. 15-1 through 16 games, nationally ranked. They've earned it. And again, we want to get out. I would like to get to the Monroe-Macon game. There's some plans for a shuck on a truck that night. If that can happen. We also have regional soccer that night. So there's some things that we got to juggle some balls and see what we can put into play and stuff. But but make sure we'll have plenty of coverage. Obviously, we've got the Quincy High Notre Dame soccer game, complete coverage of that coming up. And
oh, by the way, pretty good volleyball game too.
Yeah, 24-2 against 18-1.
Yeah, pretty good.
Not bad.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
As always, the great Matt Shuckman, everybody. We are pleased to have him here with us every other week. And again, we are super pleased to, as always, have the support of Advanced Physical Therapy. There are 2 ways to do business in this world. You can do it and profit, from a community or by a community. Advance has always been about being with this community and supporting our young people. So we greatly appreciate their support, as always, for this podcast. And I promise you, we're going to try to be back here 2 weeks from today.
We will make it happen.
Unless there's some sort of apocalypse, which actually has happened to us at least twice this fall. So we'll get back here, we promise you again.
That's right.
For the great Matt Shuckman, I'm Chris Dewar. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.